Welcome as we kick off our 2014 season with Jeff Zahner of Chattooga Gardens speaking about mountain evergreens.
Very often are pruned. They take pruning very well, and that's necessary often to keep things within bounds. And good examples are boxwoods. There's a lot of different kinds of boxwoods, from almost little miniatures that really over many years only get a couple feet tall. The dwarf English boxwood. And on the other extreme would be some really big American boxwood, which grows here all through the area very well. They do grow steadily to be a pretty large shrub. I've even seen them eat whole porches before, and they just incrementally grow. Very good, say, low-level screening material. Anything, say, under 6 feet or so. Getting a big boxwood like that is very difficult. Up to 4, 5, or 6 feet, you can get good-sized boxwoods. Most people would start with a smaller one and keep it trimmed in the right size. There are varieties that never really get very big, as say 4 feet or 5 feet tall and wide. To choose something that stays that size, you won't have a whole lot of pruning over the years. Another example in a similar use would be like Pieris. This is Japanese Andromeda. These two guys here, you can tell by their density and their small stature, they're a smaller growing shrub for a smaller type hedge or accent plant.
I'll be Vanna.
And they bloom beautifully early on in the season, say in April, which is a little early for a lot of folks that live here. But they do have a beautiful flush of growth with colorful growth. And the advantage to these, of course, is they don't ever get really big, so they'll make a nice lower hedge. There are other varieties that get up to 8 feet or so that could be a taller stream. I can go on to a lot of detail on a lot of plants. I think in
Can I ask a question?
why, sure.
This has been my nemesis for many years on home environments. This is called a dwarf Alberta spruce. How many of y'all have had one of these? Right. They do grow. They look real cute in a little pot, and they often get planted in the wrong place, right next to a front door, and they consume them. They also have other problems. Not my favorite plant, and it's cute used in the white application. I just wanted to share that. And then the colors are so cute.
And it's a type of plant that's actually a dwarf of what would be a normally bigger spruce. And the one right behind it is also of that same species. They grow in the upper Midwest. It's white spruce. And they grow very well in cool climates and as a dwarf container plant, so it's very popular. This will become a tall, narrow blue column in the landscape, and it has a little pretty blue color, especially in its new growth. And its name is Montrose Spire. Just for something different, a real vertical accent. Wouldn't necessarily be used for hedging, but it could be worked into, especially the vertical element is really good. A lot of people are familiar with other vertical elements for containers, such as the Italian cypress, which is maybe not hardy here, but maybe up to South Georgia or so. But there are other selections. This is actually a selection of a native juniper, the eastern red cedar. And it's called Blue Arrow. It grows tall and narrow, maybe up to 12 feet or so. There are other tall blue junipers in the trade, but they really don't work here because they're a high rainfall. It's called the Rocky Mountain juniper. And you'll find them in a lot of big box stores and all, because they grow easily in nurseries, but they don't really work in highlands very well. The native example where our native juniper is better for our area. Those are for tall, narrow accents. For larger screens, such as in the background here, this is American arborvitae, the very big ones, and they're probably the hardiest of the screening trees. They're from the New England and north, is where they grow naturally in North America. There's lots of varieties of those that have been selected over the years and are readily available. And their main requirement is good sun, and but the hardiest tree to zone 2 or 3 way up north. A lot of people wonder about our hardiness zone here on maps. We're really shown as a zone as a zone 6 in a lot of cases, but we really consider it a zone 5. And the higher in elevation you go, the harsher the climate is. So the mountaintops around here are really could be in some of those exposed locations could be more like the Arctic maybe. zone 4 or something, just in those very harsh conditions at times.
When you say good sun, you mean 6 hours? What are we talking
Half a
about?
day or better sun would be 6 hours or more.
Okay.
About what they do here.
And
Yes,
for the
Linda?
boxwood, the sun requirements for boxwood?
Boxwood are very shade tolerant, and they grow in full sun to really full shade. They won't grow as fast in the shade. They often have really good deep green color in the shade, where in full sun they can get a little more bronzing, especially the first couple of years after planting. Once they get more established in a bigger root system, they won't get as much winter bronzing. They're on the also still talking about the bigger screening materials. In between the big ones is one called Green Giant. You're probably familiar with that. It's gotten a whole lot of press. It's very released by the U.S. National Arboretum as a really good substitute or replacement for leyland cypress, which you're all probably familiar with in the South. Is a very fast-growing screening tree in the South. I don't even have one here because it's not. I don't consider it quite hardy here. From about here and lower in elevation, it does fine. This year, a lot of them got nipped quite hard. And that winter hardiness is really dependent on how long a particular plant has been established. Something might be very hardy once it's been growing in the landscape for several years, but for a year or two after planting, things are a little more susceptible to a really hard winter like we just had.
What shrub could we use to infiltrate like the Italian cypresses that look but be hardy enough in this climate?
The question was, what would be a good substitute for an Italian cypress look, that really pretty tall spire of green? This is one, this juniper is, there's another, this one's called Blue Arrow, there's another one called Prairie Sentinel, another good one. They're very cold hardy. And in the background here is another arborvitae. There's actually another one over here toward the shed. This one is very tall and narrow, and that's called the Groot Spire. It's a cultivar of the big eastern arborvitae. It grows very narrow and is very hardy and would be very useful for an accent plant like that. Yes. It's called arborvitae. Thuya placata is the western arborvitae, and then Thuya occidentalis, even though the name means western, it's actually eastern arborvitae, so go figure. But it's
for real life than they do, on the internet. So it's very confusing when you try to figure out what you're looking at and trying to read what the plant may or may not do, and then they're doing it. Very nice. But you just did I hear you correctly say that they just have a big
No, the leyland cypress did take it pretty hard in a lot of places. They were tilled outright or partially tilled, and I even seen some damage on green giant, which is considered one of our hardiest screening materials. And I really consider it a function of elevation as much as anything. I live at 4,000 feet in highlands, and I lost a lot of things that I was really surprised. And as you move down in elevation, a lot of those plants, like green giant, had no problems at all. And it depends on the situation. In upper elevations, especially with exposure, and with newly planted things, I've seen a lot of damage on even things that I would consider very hardy. And so where a particular plant is used is really one of the most important things to consider, especially when it comes to broadleaf evergreens, such as your hollies, and in between the maples here is the type of skip laurel, type of cherry laurel. Those broad leaves are just not as hardy as conifer leaves, conifer foliage. When you get the really cold temperatures and high winds, and they almost always seem to be combined. We had several degrees below zero and very high winds, and that was enough to really basically desiccate a lot of things. And so it ends up as a burn, and sometimes it doesn't show up for even a couple of months later. So I'm still seeing some of the winter damage show up even now on plants. Hemlocks, plantings or hedges might be more conducive to birds nesting and attracting birds to the landscape. And it's a very good question. A lot of people are interested in birding and having a bird-friendly landscape, and they need all the help we can give them. And basically, all plants and hedges, especially dense foliage things, are very good nesting sites for birds. It's hard to tell who's going to move in when you're planting, I guess I was kind of talking a little bit about the broadleaf evergreens. They just need a little more care in where they're sited around the high elevation homes. And even around a home up on a mountain, you have microclimates. On one side, it's going to be very windy, maybe exposed to a lot more sun, and around another side would be a very different climate. And so a broadleaf evergreen or holly might survive well in a sort of a protected area, and be good to go with something that's much more durable in the full sun and really bitter cold of the exposed location. Such as a mugo pine or that type of the pines and spruces in general are very resistant to high winds and very cold temperatures. These are native to the high elevations of the Alps and can go extremely low in their temperatures. They come in a lot of different shapes and sizes, mostly as a mound-shaped plant or cushion-shaped plant. There are actually cultivars that are upright in teardrop shape or even columnar shape. So they're not always just a mound. So if you have a very exposed place but want a different form, there are other forms of mugo pine. And white pine as well. I did not bring the white pine, of course, our hardiest.
Join us this summer at Dargan.com Dovecote events and hear Jeff speak again